pastor, and on behalf of the congregation of Central United Methodist Church, I welcome you. This church has been at the forefront of the peace and justice movement for 209 years, and we continue to look for ways of peace with justice to this very day. Today you will be hearing from myself, Imam Elahi, from the Islamic House of Wisdom, Reverend Kenneth Flowers, from Greater New Mount Moriah and the Council of Baptist Pastors, Congressman Andy Levin, and then he will be followed by Reverend Ed Rowe, who is the pastor emeritus here at Central United Methodist Church. We have come to talk about war and rumors of war today, especially war with Iran. As a Christian denomination, the United Methodist Church acknowledges that our allegiance to God takes precedence over our allegiance to any government. Our book of law for the church is the book of discipline, and I would like to read from it. We hold governments responsible for the protection of the rights of people to free and fair elections and to the freedom of speech, religion, assembly, communication, media, and petition to redress the grievances without fear of reprisal, to the right of privacy, and the guarantee of the rights of adequate food, clothing, shelter, education, and health care. Blockades and embargoes that seek to impede the flow or free commerce of food and medicine are practices that cause pain and suffering, malnutrition or starvation with all its detrimental consequences to innocent and non-combatant civilian populations, especially children. We reject these as instruments of domestic and foreign policy regardless of political or ideological views. Think about this. We were 10 minutes away from a war with Iran. We were charging into a war that is unnecessary and against all we stand for. Donald Trump is looking for distraction from all the investigations he is under and trying to boost himself in the polls. The United Methodist Church is very clear. We believe war is incompatible with the teachings and example of Christ. We reject war as an instrument of national foreign policy. As disciples of Christ, we are called to love our enemies, to seek justice, and serve as reconcilers of conflict. We advocate for extensions and strengthening of international treaties and institutions that provide a framework within the rule of law for responding to aggression, terrorism, and genocide. We have learned absolutely nothing from the war with Iraq. Thousands more will die if we go forward with this war. I don't know about you, but I get exhausted every day fighting this president who would rather cozy up with dictators than work with our allies for a just way to live in this world. I'm tired of hearing about wars and rumors of wars. And I am afraid that when we get tired, all of the craziness that we are experiencing since the inauguration will start to feel normal for us. And we can't let that happen. I remember having the poster in my room as a teenager that said, "War is not good for children and other living things." That was during the Vietnam War. Have we learned nothing from that war and the wars that have followed? We call on this president to be presidential, to work with our allies for a just and peaceful resolution, and we demand today that there be no war with Iran. We stand together as an interfaith community, voices from many different communities of faith, to say this war is wrong, it is immoral, and we stand against it. Thank you.
Salam, good morning everyone. I want to thank Ryan, Eric, Reverend Zundel, Rowe, organizers, and also our Honorable Congressman Andy Levin, and my friend and brother, Reverend Flower, and everyone to be part of this wonderful interfaith anti-war gathering this morning. It was almost 3 weeks ago that we woke up and we learned that the planes in the air and the missiles ready to launch, and the target was Islamic Republic of Iran. But 10 minutes later, the president changed his mind, and we thank God for that change. I'm an Iranian American living in this blessed and beautiful country for almost 27 years. Started my interfaith journey from Iran. We have a deep diversity of faith and religious diversity also over there. You may know that there are over 300 churches in Iran, different Christian denominations, and over 92 synagogues in different Iranian cities. Amazingly, both the Iranian Revolution and American Revolution shared so many similar values, especially freedom, independence, life, liberty, and human equality and dignity. Probably you heard that after the terrorist tragedy of 9/11, Iranians were the first nation to hold a candle vigil to honor the victims and express sympathy with the families of 9/11 victims, something that the State Department at that time appreciated and said, we Americans never forget that. The role of Iranian fighting against ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Iran, where the parliament was targeted by the ISIS, and also in Iraq and Syria, was tremendous contribution to defeat of those terrorist entities. Sometimes you see some frustration in Iranian demonstrations, but there are reasons. They remember the coup d'etat of 1953 against their democratic government by CIA at that time. The support of the US administration during the Iran-Iraq war, supporting Saddam Hussein for almost 8 years, and also the Flight 655 in July of 1988, when 290 passengers were killed by a missile from American Navy, and also support for Mujahideen Khalq, that is an organization killed thousands of Iranians from leadership and both ordinary people. So still the Iranians, they love Americans as a nation, and they would like to see this negotiation, dialogue, and diplomacy. If that is something that President Trump is honest and serious about that, then he should stop trying undoing everything was done by President Obama during his White House administration, and start respecting the breathtaking efforts of Dr. Zarif and John Kerry's hard work and their team that brought about the nuclear deal. So to destroy that deal was wrong, was irresponsible, was shameful. It was an obvious violation of the international signature and disrespect for our system signature on that agreement that caused this destruction. As a matter of fact, brought more isolation for the administration and moved Iran closer to Russia and China. Worse than that, the unjust sanction and economic war that John Bolton called it, the purpose of that in his expression was to squeeze Iranians. And Giuliani said the purpose is to overthrow the government over there. Obviously, that is not a way to win people's hearts and minds. And that is a wrong approach. President Trump repeatedly says that he is a successful businessman. And if he is, Iranian population over 80 million, 82 million population, that is a great market and an area of economic investigation. A smart businessman wouldn't just stay away from that opportunity. Iranians don't deserve this sanction. If anyone in the Middle East deserves that sanction, the answer is from Agnes Callamard, this great, courageous lady who led the United Nations investigation about the story of smoking Sahab regarding Khashoggi. And she came to this conclusion that Ben Salman is the one who deserves this sanction, the murder of thousands of innocent people in Yemen. Interestingly, President Trump, before his presidency, he called Saudi Arabia the founder of world terrorism. Now, if he is talking about negotiation, the first step is to go back to the deal. The second step would be to remove this oppressive sanction whose target are Iranian people. They suffer. And number three, to silence the war hawks around him in the White House and don't listen to certain individuals in the Middle East who advocate for war. I know that Mr. Netanyahu, he said that he convinced Trump to exit from the deal, and in recent Warsaw conference, Netanyahu said that the idea and the purpose of that conference was to advance our interest in war with Iran. Well, if Kim Jong-un, in the idea, in the eyes of President Trump, is a great leader, and if Taliban, who are negotiating in Doha with US representatives, but at the same time are killing innocent Afghani on the streets of Kabul, if they deserve this negotiation, and President Trump, with total humbleness, meets with the leader of North Korea, then there should be an honest intention in negotiation with the Iranians. Those who push for war and continue shopping for war, they try to see the American blood, American money, American time, and American tax money used for a movie that they would like to watch and just have their popcorn and a cinema where the American soldiers are sinking in an unnecessary, unneeded an unended war. That is absolutely stupid. So if the president means to negotiate, he should change his language. Choose a language of peace, honesty, respect, and humbleness, not the language and tone of greed and stubbornness, anger, arrogance, ego, and my way or highway. That should be changed. Benjamin Franklin, one of our great founding fathers, said something so wise. He said, life tragedy is we get old too soon, but get wise too late. If there is any wisdom after the experience of Vietnam, Iraq, Libya, and now Yemen, then the wisdom is the best way out of this mess, this confusion, this chaos that cause casualties all over the world. The lesson of wisdom is something that we learn from Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and is represented in this wonderful gathering of interfaith leaders in this blessing church this afternoon. Now I would like to invite my very beloved brother and friend, Dr. Reverend Kenneth Flowers, to continue. Thank you.
Thank you to my beloved friend and brother, Imam Elahi, as well as our host pastor and others who've gathered here today. I am the Reverend Kenneth James Flowers, pastor of the Greater New Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church, and I stand here on behalf of the Council of Baptist Pastors, Detroit and vicinity. The Reverend Dr. Dee Marie Coleman is our president. Imam Elahi talked about the reckless cost, the reckless wars in the Middle East. I would like to remind us today of the reckless costs here at home. In our communities, the schools are closing because there isn't enough money to properly educate our young people. Those schools that remain open are overcrowded because they do not have the resources to better resources. Books from the last century continue to exist in our various classrooms. Our buildings are truly falling apart. We have right here in Detroit, 40% poverty rate in the city of Detroit because there's not enough money for jobs and investment. We don't have reliable public transportation, public transit, to get to the jobs that do exist because there isn't enough money. Our roads are crumbling, and as the governor stated, we must fix the damn roads because we have no money for infrastructure. And yet, our water is still being poisoned. Our water is still being shut off. Detroit used to be the envy of the world. We used to be looked upon as a place to go because we were the birthplace of the middle class. We invested in our children, in our neighborhoods, and in our futures. We did all we could to make this country what it is today by creating and establishing the middle class. Many people know about that $5 a day job at Ford. Where did all the money go? Where did all the resources go? Well, I'll tell you where all the money went. The money went to the wars in Iraq, I should say, and Afghanistan. The money went there because our government has spent $6 trillion on war in the Middle East since 2001. That is 60 million school salaries that could have been paid. That's $100 million in full scholarship to the University of Michigan alone. That's 750,000 miles of new highway. That could pay an annual water bill for 6 billion with a B, Detroiters. What a tragedy. What a waste. What a calamity. There is not enough money, never enough money for jobs, for health care, for housing, for education. There is never enough money for the least of these, my brothers and my sisters. There is never enough money for children who are hungry and go to bed hungry every night. There's never enough money for parents who need hope. There's never enough money to help those who are in need. But there always seems to be enough money for another military adventure. There's always enough money to line up troops and send them to wars abroad. Right now, this very second, toddlers and babies are torn apart from their relatives along our southern border. Right now, children coming across the border into our country have been shoved into jail cells that they call cages. The government claims that we don't have enough money. We don't have enough money for these innocent children to give them socks and blankets and toothbrushes. Then they say it's not necessary that they have personal hygiene. We don't have enough money to help traumatize 4-year-olds. We don't have enough money to reach out, help the left out, the locked out. Then Donald Trump has the audacity to say, if you don't like these conditions, then don't come to America. Somewhere I read that America is the land of the free and the home of the brave. Somewhere I read, bring me your tired, your huddled masses, yearning to be free. Somewhere I read, America is to be the great nation of this world. Somewhere I read that it's all right to bring immigrants here to America. Somewhere I read we have to understand now is the time to open up our borders to those seeking political asylum, not shut them off at the border. Who benefits from all of this? We don't have money for our children. Yet Donald Trump claims we have enough money to build the wall. We have enough money to put a wall in the desert to keep folk out. I say tear down the wall and let's build bridges of freedom, justice, and understanding. There's not enough money, as we say, to help our children, but there is enough money to send aircraft carriers steaming toward the Gulf. There is enough money, so they say, to start another war. I got news for you today. Who benefits from this situation? It is certainly not those of us at home who've never been hurt, threatened, nor traumatized by those people of Iran. Dr. King said in 1967 at the Riverside Church when he spoke out against the Vietnam War, what do I look like going over to Vietnam trying to attack brown people, yellow people who've never done anything to me? The same is true today in America and Iraq and in Iran. I was in Iraq the end of April, beginning of May. I began to understand the dynamics as to what's going on. As soon as I returned from Iraq, I received word that Americans had to leave Iraq, evacuate Iraq, because of a pending war in Iran. Let me make it unequivocally clear. The ones that suffer are not those of us who are going to war, but the Iranian people who are watching their lives evaporate daily under the scourging heat of sanctions and who will certainly die in the conflict. Not the soldiers that benefit us, but they will be the ones deployed away from their parents, from their families, and from their children. These are the ones who will face terrible and grave dangers. Who benefits from a war in Iraq? Who benefits from a war in the Middle East? I'll tell you who benefits. Manufacturers of weapons and planes and ships. Who benefits? the lobbyists who grease the palms of defense contractors who benefit, those hawks in Washington, D.C., who will build carriers in the pursuit of war, but will never themselves lift up a rifle to shoot that gun. Yes, we've got to understand. We've got to learn how to eradicate this and stop this war before it even begins. We must understand not to lose this opportunity to stop war and strive for peace. That's why I stand here today with my brothers and my sisters from the interfaith community. We now call on Donald Trump. We now call upon Congress to end this war with Iran before it even begins. Turn the ships around. Bring our young people home before it is too late. Let there be peace. Let there be justice. Let us stop this tragedy right now. Dr. King said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Let us do all what we can to make sure that we will stop war before it begins. I'm a man of peace and nonviolence and truth and justice. And I believe that truth crushed to the earth will rise again. I believe that there will be peace. I believe that the lion must lie down with the lamb, and we shall overcome someday. God bless you. I now turn it over to Congressman Andy Levin.
Thank you so much, Reverend Flowers. Thank you, Imam Elahi. Reverend Flowers, I want you to know I'm going down to the border this weekend. It is so upsetting to see what our government is doing in our name to children, to families, separating them. This is not necessary. This is not something that Congress has asked for, and all of us need to do everything we can to stop that. Reverend Zundel, thank you so much for having us here and for your leadership as well. But you know, I was invited here, I think I understand, as a member of Congress. But first, I want to speak as a leader in the Jewish community. Before I went to Congress, I was the president of a little synagogue called Congregation Shi'ia in Oak Park. And before I came to Congress, I was a co-founder of an organization called Detroit Jews for Justice. And in my Torah, Deuteronomy, it says, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof. Justice, justice shall you pursue. We don't believe words are there at random, or they're extra words. They're all there on purpose. It says justice twice. Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof. We must pursue justice. When the prophet Micah was asked to boil down all of the 613 mitzvot, or commandments for Jews to follow into a few words, he said, all you have to do is do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Amen. So we are trying to reach Donald Trump, we are trying to reach the leaders of our country to say that there is no purpose for war with Iran. We will not accept it, and we must do everything in our power to stop it before it happens. You know, this isn't about Democrats and Republicans. It's about the safety of the American people and the people of Iran and people elsewhere in that neighborhood. Do we believe that the president should be able to put our troops in harm's way and put our country through another horrific war without input? In fact, zero input from the people's representatives, their elected representatives in Congress? If you believe in the Constitution, we need you to stand with us on this. The Constitution and the War Powers Act make it perfectly clear that the president must come to Congress before using force, military force against another country. And he has not done that. We will not allow the president's whims to get us into yet another war. especially this president, whose incoherent strategy on Iran was already making us less safe, not more safe. He pulled out of a deal, and I hasten to add, not just between the US and Iran, but between many countries that we are not allowed to just leave willy-nilly on our own. We signed onto that multilateral agreement. The Iran nuclear deal, which was working, and we know from our intelligence, from Israeli intelligence, from other countries' intelligence, that Iran was following the deal, and it was keeping the world more safe. I'm not only on the Foreign Affairs Committee of the U.S. House, I'm also on the Asia and Non-Proliferation Subcommittee of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Preventing the spread of nuclear weapons is of grave concern to me and to all of us, and to life on planet Earth for that matter. And it's very important that Iran not have a nuclear weapon. They agreed to a deal to prevent that from happening, and they were following it until Donald Trump withdrew. So let me just tell you what little modest contribution I've been trying to make to this effort that we all share responsibility for. I sounded the alarm in May when Secretary of State Mike Pompeo started hinting that the Trump administration felt it has authorization to go to war with Iran. And in particular, he drew a false association that ought to ring bells for us. He started talking about Al-Qaeda and the Iranian government and how they have this relation. Well, the two lies that led us into the Iraq War were supposedly Saddam's relationship with Al-Qaeda and then, the weapons of mass destruction. Well, this is not true. I sent him a letter saying, show us the evidence that there is this link to support your claims. He has not provided any evidence whatsoever. Then I introduced a bipartisan bill, the AUMF Clarification Act, AUMF Authorization for Use of Military Force, to make it perfectly clear that the president does not have the authority to attack Iran. And the bill is very simple. It says neither AUMF 1, right after 9/11, nor AUMF 2, that led into the war in Afghanistan, and has been used for so many purposes, gives you authorization to go to war with Iran, nor does any other action Congress has taken. If you want to go to war with Iran, you must come back and follow the Constitution and ask for permission from the Congress of the United States. And more than 70 members of Congress have signed on to that bill, 70 members of the House from all across our nation. Now, without any assurance that that bill will move forward quickly enough, because this is an emergency, isn't it? This is an emergency. So now I helped write a bipartisan amendment to Congress's annual must-pass military authorization bill that the House will consider this month. And we put in language that prohibits an unauthorized attack on Iran. Again, trying to use whatever means we can. And many of you, I assume, join me in having reservations about the NDAA, the Defense Authorization Bill, in terms of the way too high level of spending. But in any event, that bill will be passed, and we might as well get in there a prohibition against unauthorized war with Iran. So I just want to thank everybody standing here, everybody sitting out in the pews of this place of peace. Those of us who protested against the idea of war with Iraq before it happened, and we didn't succeed, and those like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who Reverend Flowers referenced, who spoke out against the Vietnam War in 1967. One thing he didn't say, Reverend Flowers, is that he didn't win any popularity contest for coming out against. He said, that's not your lane. Right. You're supposed to be about this other lane. But of course, Dr. King didn't have any lanes. He was about peace and justice for all people on this planet. So we need to, all of us, do everything we can to tell Donald Trump and the world that we will not accept an unauthorized war with Iran. It will not accomplish anything. We need to do justice and have peace. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Reverend Rowe, the emeritus pastor of this church at Rowe.
Well, thank you, Dr. Zundel, Reverend Flowers. I really appreciate your boycott we have not on Iran but on our own tour.
Yes.
Imam, you have been unbelievable spokesperson for peace for a long time. Congressman, thank you. My name is Ed Rowe, and I am the pastor emeritus of this church, but I am also that's the person who knocked over the sign. I am also the co-chair of the Methodist Federation for Social Action in Michigan. Dr. Flowers, one of the things that I remember from that speech that both you and the Congressman mentioned in Riverside Church in 1967 is this word that there are times when silence is betrayal.
Yes. Yes.
I think this, for the faith community, is just such a time. Ronald Reagan famously said to competitors in a speech for the presidency, "Here we go again." An administration unjustly elected in the midst of gerrymandering and many other tools to steal our vote for voter suppression has had its day. The same question with different names comes to us. As the New York Times put it, is Trump going to lie our way into a war with Iran?
Mercy.
That is ours to answer.
Yes.
And there is a time when silence is betrayal. Could we have possibly forgotten how a president named Bush assured us that Saddam Hussein was harboring terrorists, and that, by the way, you remember, also we had weapons of mass destruction, which we never found. What did we tell the families of the thousands who died on both sides of those lines? Oh, Donald Rumsfeld tells us, oh yes, the president is correct, and it is not debatable. This president would like to believe the same.
Yes.
It is, in fact, debatable, and it is, in fact, changeable. More than 15 years later, we're still in a war that has killed thousands on both sides and made us less secure. Here we go again, Donald Trump assures us. Iran is harboring al-Qaeda terrorist cells. The CIA chief, Mike Pompeo, runs to the defense of the president because if you don't these days, you just simply lose your job. A president that has wrapped around him war whisperers, and he doesn't even listen to them or even read their briefs, but not enough to come with any evidence, not enough to ever prove the things that he says one day and contradicts the next. What I want to tell you today, in addition to what's happening in our city and every city of poor people, and especially people of color, is that we're risking nuclear war. We're in a different whole world right now with a president that is totally unstable and his finger on the nuclear button. Remember, family, just a few short weeks ago, as others have said, we were 10 minutes away from sending missiles that could not only kill innocent people on sight, but put a whole planet in danger of nuclear war. Could it possibly be true that our unstable president didn't think to ask about the casualties until minutes before the launch? Could it possibly be true that none of the war whisperers that he has gathered around him might have approached that subject before it was about to be launched? Oh my God. The debate over whether the drone was in Iran territory, well, I have a good guess. What else would it be doing there? But I don't know that. But what's more absurd is for members of the administration to say it is unprovoked. Have they forgotten? 2,500 American troops sent to the region, an aircraft carrier, B-52 bombers, complete with missile batteries, and more, and more, and all not to mention a blockade that is causing thousands and thousands of people in Iran to live and suffer every day of their lives. Donald Trump says he wants to stop Iran from developing the capacity to build nuclear bombs. Well, he had that at his inauguration, and he pulled us back from it. Why? Maybe just to destroy everything Barack Obama worked to create. The stopping the production of enriched uranium, it had already happened. UN people to supervise and to verify, they're already there. No, it didn't stop Iran from doing other things that we disagree with, but the goal was to save not only us from a conventional war, but to save the planet from another threat of nuclear war. A war nobody wins. So our unstable, isolationist, interventionist, unread president, leader of the free world, pulled us out of an agreement that not just with Iran, but with all our allies. Was the goal to stop nuclear proliferation that threatens the planet, or was it to undo everything that our president said? And what was his sin? Being black. The instability and unpredictability of Donald Trump is off the charts. This man who 1 minute presents himself as an isolationist, make America great again, is in the next minute an interventionist. This man that will not even read the briefs given to him by his war whisperers may decide tomorrow not only to commit thousands of troops to an unconventional war, but also to commit this planet to a no risk for a nuclear destruction. I believe that what several experts and a few candidates for president have already said, we are closer in this moment to nuclear war than ever before. As people of faith, and even those who dare to allow ourselves to be called leaders of the faith, we believe that every human being is a magnificent creation of the divine. Not only every human being, but everything that was created is created as a miraculous creation of the divine. So I ask you to answer the question, is Trump going to lie our way into a new war with Iran? And even the worst question, what will we do while he's trying to do it? What will the faith community do? There is a time when silence is betrayal, and this is such a time. Will Donald Trump commit us not only to another war we can't win, against people who will protect their own land and their own lives to the end, but to a nuclear game of chicken where there are no winners? Will we only speak, or will we come together and allow our words and the spirit and faith to bring us to action? I believe we will hear the Spirit. I believe that we will stop worrying about our institutional safety or even our jobs. That we will begin to worry about whether we are being faithful to our God and faithful to our communities. I believe that we will hear the Spirit, and we will not be the people being silent, because silence is betrayal.
Yes.